hitting a home run, punching someone in the face, getting tubular on some waves, and kick-flipping down a set of stairs. These are all possibilities in the 2020 Olympic Games. Baseball, karate, and surfing are all under consideration for being in the Olympics. But the most important one is skateboarding, which may finally become an Olympic sport. The 2012 London Olympic Games set the record for the most watched event in TV history. According to the Huffington Post, 219.4 million Americans tuned into the Olympic Games. Skateboarding can add to this record-breaking number and be enjoyed by millions around the world. Today, I want to explain why skateboarding should be in the Olympics. I will start by explaining a little bit about the Olympics, about the history, and what the Olympics is all about. I will talk about other extreme sports currently in the Olympics, and finish off with why skateboarding should be inducted into the Olympics. So first, let's start with what the Olympics is all about and where it all started. The first recorded Olympic Games dates back to 776 BC. This was known as the Ancient Olympic Games. This was located in the sacred city of Olympia on the southwestern coast of Greece. And this Olympic Games only included one event, which was the 192-meter foot race. By 648 BC, the Olympics included diabolos, a 400-meter dash equivalent, tolikos, a long-distance race, the pentathlon, a foot race, which included 5 different events, which was a foot race, the long jump, discus and javelin throw, and a wrestling match. And this also included boxing, chariot racing, and pancration, which was a combination of boxing and wrestling. We fast forward to the modern Olympic Games, which was first held in Athens, Greece in 1896. A few more events were added to this. There were 280 participants in that modern games, and 13 nations competed in 43 different events. This covered track and field, swimming, shooting, cycling, wrestling, and many other events. And only men were allowed to participate in these games. And these Olympic Games are held every 4 years, which is known as an Olympiad. But for these sports to be inducted into these games, there is a certain criteria that must be followed that is sought over by the Olympic Committee. First, a sport must be governed by an international federation which complies with the Olympic Charter and applies with the World Anti-Doping Code. So all these sports have federations that they follow, that they're under, which makes it possible for them to be in the Olympics. Also, a document explaining the Olympics states that if it is widely practiced around the world and satisfies a number of criteria established by the International Olympic Committee session, a recognized sport may be added to the Olympic program. So now that we've covered what it takes to become an Olympic sport, I want to take a look at some of the extreme sports that have been recognized and inducted into the Olympic Games. There have been many extreme sports brought into the Olympics over the years, from sailing to mountain biking, and these sports have shown great interest around the world. But some of the ones that closely relate to skateboarding are BMX racing and snowboarding. First off, the BMX racing was made its debut in the 2008 Beijing Olympics under the International Cycling Union sanctioning body. Sanctioning bodies in the United States include the American Bicycle Association and the National Bicycle League. The American Bicycle Association is certified under the UCI, which makes it recognized by the Olympic Committee, which makes it possible for bicycling to be in the Olympics. The second would be snowboarding, which is in the Winter Olympics, and that first debuted in 1998 in the Japan Winter Olympics. And an article on the Olympics website explains that snowboarding combines elements of surfing, skateboarding, and skiing. So this brings us to how skateboarding is just like these other Olympic extreme sports. As I said earlier, BMX and snowboarding were brought into the Olympics, but before that, they were a part of other extreme games, otherwise known as the X Games. I'm sure many of you have seen X Games ads and TV, on TV and stuff like that. So it's an extreme sports competition that's held around the world during the summer and the winter. And this includes BMX racing, snowboarding, surfing, skateboarding, and other extreme sports. But skateboarding has always drawn the biggest crowd. Whether it be street skateboarding, vertical ramp skateboarding, the park event, or the big air event, skateboarding has always pleased everybody. And skateboarding popularity continues to grow. There's a contest series called Street League Skateboarding, and it has gained a huge amount of viewers. In 2014, according to TV by the Numbers, the SLS Super Crown broke rating records with 2.8 million viewers on Fox alone. And this does not include everybody that is tuning in on the internet around the world. So skateboarding is big now. It's no longer just a child's hobby. An article on the Ride channel shows that this year there has been in total $1,740,800 paid out to skaters. And that's just in this contest series alone. So this doesn't include people making money from their sponsors and other things like that. One example of this is professional skateboarder Juan Oliveira. He won $227,000 in this in contest alone. So he's not making money. This isn't including his money made from Nike and Flip skateboards and stuff like that. So it's being taken pretty seriously. The tricks and maneuvers that these skateboarders do are very hard. They take months of training and practice to perfect this. They train just as hard as some Olympians do. As you know, Shaun White is an Olympic snowboarder, and he trains just as hard as these other skateboarders do. So they perform just as hard as Olympians do to perfect their craft. So people really underestimate the skill level of these skateboarders. They don't really take them seriously. So an example of one of these skateboarders is professional skateboarder Nyjah Huston. He trains every day. He has a workout plan that he follows, and he also follows a strict diet to help him perform to the optimal level of skateboarding. In 2013, Nyjah Huston won over $1 million in contest series alone. And I think that's pretty amazing to see that skateboarders can do this and make a living off of skateboarding. So it's not just a hobby that people see it as. And in order for skateboarding to become an Olympic sport, it does have to follow the criteria that's set by the Olympic Committee. So we talked about earlier how there has to be a federation, and they fall under the International Skateboarding Federation. The ISF's goals are to make skateboarding available around the world. So they want to promote and support the sport of skateboarding to guarantee its future. It follows the World Anti-Doping Code as well, as spoken about earlier in the criteria. So as you can see, it has everything that it needs to become an Olympic sport. So in conclusion, I introduced you to what the Olympics is all about and what it takes to become an Olympic sport. I gave you examples of existing extreme Olympic sports, and I gave you evidence to prove that skateboarding belongs in the Olympics. Skateboarding will continue to grow and be enjoyed by millions around the world. And these athletes, they train hard, just as Olympians do, and they meet the criteria of what it takes to become an Olympic sport. So the question is no longer if skateboarding will be an Olympic sport, it is when skateboarding will be an Olympic sport.
So Dane, share with us your thoughts on his speech.
I think you had a very effective intro.
You know what? I screwed that up completely.
Oh no.
You go ahead. Bill. You go ahead. I apologize. I apologize.
I think you had a really effective intro. It grabbed the attention of pretty much everybody here. you had a very organized speech and preview. I'd say that's all good. All your sources seem to be checked. So the only thing that I really had a problem with was that speech didn't seem to be very persuasive to me. It seemed like you were kind of giving more of an informative speech. Although I would agree with you that skateboarding should be in the Olympics, I don't really feel like if somebody disagreed, they'd be persuaded otherwise. I'd say that when you gave the history of the Olympics, I think that was a little bit too long and didn't really add to your point. So I would just cut that down a little bit. It is still important to have. You mentioned some special code and like criterias for sports in the Olympics, and I didn't really, kind of wanted to know what those were. Aside from that, it was a really effective speech, and yeah.
Okay. The thing I screwed up on, I went to the wrong Z, and that's but I just moved you around. You're fine. So we'll get you in credit there, and then when Zach returns and speaks, Evan is going to have to do the evaluation there. That was my fault. I apologize. I just defaulted to the first Z that I saw. Zane, I thought that the opening was excellent. I thought you identified the topic in a very effective way. You had a good statement of what your purpose was. There was a very clear preview about how you're going to develop this. So structurally, everything was solid. Dane said that he thought that opening section with the history of the Olympics was a little bit long. I could see maybe why that's the case. I don't know that we need to have a detail on all of the Olympic events, for instance, that occurred, 700 years BC, and then by 400 years BC, some of the other things. Cut that down a little bit, but the idea is in the ancient Olympics, the purpose was why did they have this, and what kinds of events did they have? Get through that quickly. And then you get to the modern Olympics, and the idea that they can add sports and that they're more contemporary sports that reflect the times that are going on. I think you could probably use some examples of things that were Olympic sports but have disappeared since then, and show how Olympic sports have been added along the way. And I think that would make that argument a little bit more persuasive in nature. You're kind of showing this trend that this is the direction in which things are going. The setup of the criteria, I do think that you explain what the criteria are to some degree. I think there's a good understanding about why you see things the way you do. And the whole second point is like all an analogy to these other two sports that you mentioned, the snowboarding and the other one. The what is it, the biking? Yeah, the biking, thing that we're talking about there, and how they fit in that category. And I thought you did a good job on that. You might show, for example, tell us a little bit about how they became Olympic sports, and say, here's the criteria that they had to meet, and here's the level of popularity or interest, here's the amount of competition. I know in the criteria that there are standards. For example, they have to be practiced in a variety of countries in the world to meet that. There might be a federation, for instance, but the federation has to exist in a certain number of countries. It can't just be, it's in the United States, so let's put it in the Olympics, and then we'll kick ass all the time, and we'll always get the gold medals. That doesn't seem like it would be fair, and I don't think under Olympic standards it is that way. There have to be international federations of a certain number of countries or something like that, or certain populations. So a little bit more information about those criteria, but I thought you did a very good job making the analogy to those other two sports and showing how they fit in well. The presentation things, you know what? I thought that you did a nice job. You're enthusiastic, but you are subdued in your enthusiasm. You're not going overboard on the skateboarding thing like you might have done before. I thought you made an argument here, which is exactly what you want to do. So it sounds pretty good. When you look at us, you do a really good job at that. But boy, there are lots of times when you're down at those notes. And I think you know your subject well enough. 2 more rehearsals, you could probably put those notes away and then just talk to us and you'd be fine. But because you've got them in your hand, you kind of feel a need to go to them and double check on stuff. And if you just had a little bit of an outline, a single outline, instead of each of the pages that you're going through, which you don't really need except occasionally to read a sentence or two from, it would help so much on your delivery, you know, and it's a small part of what you're being evaluated on here, but we want to make sure that everybody is doing those kinds of things. And I thought you were right on the brink of doing that really effectively, just maybe a little bit underwhelming. The gestures are limited a little bit by the notes in your hand. I'm going to mention this. I don't know if anybody else notices it. When you watch the speech, there's kind of a little dip thing that you do with your knees when you're speaking. I don't know if it's a skateboarder's thing or something, but sometimes you get to a particular spot and it's like, you know, you drop down a little bit on your knees, and it's like a point of emphasis that you're doing, and I'm not sure if you're doing it intentionally or if it's just like a habit that you have. If it's intentional, then it needs to kind of fit with what you're talking about more. If it's unintentional, you want to be careful about it. And I saw it 2 or 3 times. I thought, what is that all about? You know, that kind of thing. Did anybody else notice that? No? Well, now you can all go back and watch his video and see what I'm talking about. Okay, thank you.